Absalom was quite the looker. The Hebrew Bible tells us that from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head, Absalom glistened blemish-free. I suppose that countless women likely fantasize about making Absalom their baby daddy. To their dismay, however, this beefy boy toy fathered little more than a brutal bloodbath of fratricidal revenge, whereas contemporary blonde hunks settled their disputes in a Zoolandarian walk-off. Absalom resorted to the old-fashioned tactic of disposition, overthrowing his father's rule and sending King David fleeing beyond the Jordan. The 42nd Psalm, which we read in a responsive reading this morning, bears witness to King David's experience of exile. It pleads, "As a deer longs for flowing streams, so my soul longs for you, O God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When shall I come and behold the face of God?" I marvel at how deserted and defeated the psalmist must have felt. Her poetic record sheds light on just how deep her cravings and yearnings for divine presence really were. In a publication entitled The Universalist Pulpit, Reverend Hosea Ballou describes these lines as the motions of a soul that is filled with love for God. This, he believed, was the spirit from which true worship proceeds. As we gather here in worship today, I suspect that many of us share the psalmist's yearning for a closer connection with the divine. Yet we may feel as if we can't quite get there on our own. On the one hand, there may be those of us struggling with the feeling of numbness. The doldrums of summer, replete with scorching heat, have hardened our hearts and perhaps even dehydrated our souls. The ever-undulating heartbeat of human life has flattened out into a near comatose state. We aspire for intimacy with the divine mystery, but languish helplessly under desensitized indifference. It is simply too hot for a healthy connection. On the other hand, there may be those of us struggling with the feeling of torment. Though not uniquely of our own doing per se, we find ourselves severely afflicted by emotional or psychological or physical pain. Perhaps a loved one has recently passed away. Maybe a friend needlessly suffers. Perhaps a family member is introducing unnecessary strife into your family's relations. Even if we want to turn towards God, the task feels impossible. Our depression is too heavy. Our fatigue is too intense. Our wounds are too deep. Life, after all, we tell ourselves, consists of excessive suffering, and we feel as if we have fallen victim to its machinations. Not too long ago, I experienced both of these conditions firsthand. I simply could not connect with the living God, and trust me, I tried. I'm in divinity school. After all, I wanted nothing more than to encounter the warmth of God's breath as it filled my lungs with the promise of healing. You see, for the past 10 years of my life, I have struggled with chronic disease. This past month, my illness flared and it catapulted me onto the operating table. And as I lay powerless in my 22nd floor hospital room post-surgery, God felt very distant, even non-existent. Daggers of sharp pain sliced my state of mind into inflamed and glazed hurt. painkillers I ingested, the more nausea I encountered. All the while I walked back and forth, letting out an occasional sigh in a faint attempt to achieve even momentary release from that torturous aching. In a very real sense, my bodily concerns, the sheer intensity of my physical state, had expelled the spirit altogether. I was so enveloped in the flesh that I could no longer tap into that which lay beyond. I was so tied to the corporeal that I could no longer incorporate myself into the corporate spirit. Lest we think that such suffering need not concern this faith community. Lest we think that the numbness and torment that some of us may face need not warrant the attention of this congregation, let us remember the final hours of Jesus' ministry here on earth. Nailed to the cross, with shattered nerves and gaping wounds, with collapsing lungs and a failing heart, with gasping breaths and eventual cardiac rupture, Jesus of Nazareth cried, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Those words of existential emptiness haunt us to this very day. My God, why have you forsaken us? At that moment of physical woe, the young carpenter of Nazareth could not find God. The poignant prophet of hospitality could not find God. The old preacher of compassion could not find God. The holistic healer of all humanity could not find God. The wisdom teacher of truth could not find God. No, on that dark Good Friday afternoon, the great mystic and Messiah could barely utter the words, a single cry of desertedness, Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani, my God, why have you forsaken me? I encourage you to take a moment to consider the Good Fridays in your own life. When have you felt abandoned by God? What disconnects you from the divine?